Jimmy Gownley is the award-winning creator of Amelia Rules, Tanner Rocks, The Dumbest Idea Ever, and more, as well as a co-host of the Unpacking Peanuts podcast. This time, he joins me to talk about why the earliest stuff sells the best, never mind how much his art has improved since then, ergonomics, putting comics on Substack for free, and, of course, peanuts. First, as always, I'd like to thank our patrons for helping to keep the show going. You can pitch in by pledging at least $2 a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim, and this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo, and now here's the interview. Okay, I'm talking with Jimmy Gownley, and you're in Pennsylvania, right?
Yep, good old Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Yeah, so welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Familiar with Jimmy because of the Unpacking Peanuts podcast. I can't believe it's already been a year since I interviewed Michael Cohen, one of your co-hosts, and going to get to Harold here eventually too. And we'll also talk about Peanuts. But before we get to that, so besides Peanuts, what comics did you read growing up?
Well, I grew up in a really, really little town, less than 3,000 people, called Girardville. And my parents were older. My dad grew up in like the 30s and 40s, really the late 30s. So he was a big comic book fan. And, when we would go to the Jiffy Mart or Halby's drugstore or whatever in town, we would go and buy comics together. So I just whatever was there. I got like a lot of part ones of stories and a lot of part twos of stories that never made any sense, never added up. But I think we got mostly DC comics because for whatever reason, even back in the 70s still, DC had like a weird advantage over Marvel just through the newsstand distribution stuff. So we got a lot more of that.
Well, I know that at one point DC was like distributing Marvel, and Marvel could only have a limited number of titles.
Yeah. So I was on like the tail end of that. But like my first comic, first superhero comic, I would have really loved. The two I would have been Marvel Tales with Spider-Man, which was the Steve Ditko reprints, which I did not know were reprints, and I loved Marv Wolfman and George Perez's New Teen Titans. And those were like my favorites up until I got to be like 14, and then I found alternative comics, and that changed my life and really made me realize that I wanted to be a comic book cartoonist more than anything.
I see. Did you go to school for cartooning?
Well, I have a degree in studio art. So I learned, illustration, graphic design, figure drawing, and stuff like that. I was an art director in television news for years. I was nominated for an Emmy as a regional, art director. But I did a comic book as like an independent study. And my senior year, I had several really good professors, but I had one amazing professor, this guy, Robert A. Nelson. If you look him up, he's one of the best draftsman who's ever lived. There's another guy named Robert Lynn Nelson. It's not him. This is Robert A. Nelson. And he was a comic book guy. His son, Mark Nelson, is a pretty well-known comic book artist. He did the original Aliens comics and stuff like that. So he was my professor, and so I learned a lot there. But I was self-publishing comic books from the time I was 15 years old and selling them out of my locker at high school.
Okay. Any similarity to what you're doing now in terms of like type of story?
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah. So what happened was, literally in terms of, I'll tell it this way. So when I was 14, I moved from being an eighth grader to a freshman in high school. And I just had a total meltdown, tons of mental health issues. And I was in the coal regions of Pennsylvania, so they treated me for allergies. It was just a bad scene. And I was like, I want to find a way to reinvent myself. So, at this point, I had gone to my first comic book store, and I found Cerebus and ElfQuest and Love and Rockets and Zot and The Rocketeer. And these comics were just the greatest comics in the world. I think they're still among the greatest comics in the world. And Cerebus was self-published, which I learned from the guy behind the counter. And I was like, I'm doing that. I'm only 15. I have no money. I have no talent. I have no clue, but I'm self-publishing. So I showed it to my friend Tony. And I thought Tony was really like this hip, sophisticated guy. And he would love my comic, which was called Star-Lord, which I didn't know there was a Marvel comic called Star-Lord. I tried to combine Star Wars and the Lord of the Rings. And he said, that's a terrible idea. No one will read that. I said, that's ridiculous. I think lots of people will read it. He said, well, no girls will read it. And I said, oh. So he said to me, why don't you write a comic book about us? And I did. And I started publishing this comic book called Shades of Gay Comics and Stories. And but the joke is, when he told me that, I said that was the dumbest idea I ever heard. And that was in 1986. And in 2014, Scholastic Books published my memoir, The Dumbest Idea Ever, which is about that story. And it won the Children's Choice Book of the Year award. So Tony was right all those years ago.
So do a comic about you guys. Okay.
Yeah. And that's always what I've done.
And maybe even some girls read it. Yeah,
lots of girls read it. Yeah, lots of girls read it. By the way, if doing a comic book to try to impress girls, it actually totally works. People will tell you it won't. Totally works. It's actually flawless. It's just got to be the right comic book.
Sure. Okay. Now, what was the first comic that was not self-published by you, that was published by a publisher?
Well, I self-published Shades of Grey starting when I was 15, and I finessed it and relaunched it and was able to get it in comic book stores. And then I guess that was in 1993. And then in 1996, a publisher called Caliber, who they're they're forgotten now, but they were a really interesting black and white publisher. And they started tons of people's careers. They're the original publishers of The Crow, that movie. But they launched the careers of Brian Michael Bendis, David Mack. Tons of people came through there. Guy Davis. And they picked up my Shades of Grey stories, a Comics and Stories comic, for a line they did called Tapestry. And that lasted like 4 years. Lasted 4 issues. And then I did Amelia, but I sort of self-published Amelia, but sort of not. It was a long, convoluted story that isn't really for here. But I ended up getting an opportunity where I could meet with some people who would be willing to invest in a small publishing company. So Michael Cohen, Karen Applegate Gownley, and myself all learned how to write a business plan and figure out how a publishing company would work and what we could do. And we worked together and we published a comic book called, what was it called? The Forbidden Book, which was Michael's anthology of like fantasy stories, which with amazing creators, and my comic Amelia Rules. And we self-published 4 volumes of Amelia Rules, like self-published. So we were a small publishing company. We did a best of that we actually sold to Scholastic. And then in 2007, Simon & Schuster bought the entire Amelia Publishing, or they licensed the entire Amelia Publishing rights from me. So it always seemed to be like a self-publishing thing would lead to a success with a smaller publisher, or rather a bigger publisher than I was. And then it just kind of kept going that way. And in between times, I've worked for Disney and done all sorts of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So Amelia Rules, if the listeners aren't familiar, tell us what that is.
Well, it was my comic. I started in 2001. This is the 25th anniversary. It was before there was a kids comic boom. There were no kids comics. And so I decided, of course, I wanted to do not only a kids comic, I want to do a literary kids comic in full color with a little girl as the protagonist, which was the opposite of what comics have been trying to do for the last 15 years, you know? So it was her life story. She tells it. It's funny. It's sad. She goes from age 9 to age like 13 in the series. It's 8 volumes from Simon & Schuster. And eventually the last one made the New York Times bestseller list. So, you know, from self-publishing in your locker to the New York Times bestseller list was a pretty wild journey to go on.
Yeah, I see. So I I read the first volume,
Mm-hmm.
The Whole World's Crazy, and then
Mm-hmm.
I jumped to your Substack, and like, wow, such a huge leap in terms of the art quality. I mean, the first Amelia looks fine, but now your art really pops. So what happened there in between?
I drew 1,300. No, I drew 2,000 pages of comic books.
Okay, so it's just from doing it that you gradually improved.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, my favorite. I was happy to grow up in public because like my first comic I ever made. I'm like, it's not made until I print it and try to sell it to people. I didn't make a comic if I drew a bunch of pages and put them in a drawer. I just didn't waste my time. But it's not being a cartoonist. That's having a hobby, and that's fine. So I was always happy to just put the work out I was capable of at the time, knowing it's my absolute best. And also kind of like, I knew where I was going. And I knew that if there was enough people along with me, it would be fine. And my favorite things grow like that. Like, Cerebus was my favorite comic long before all the controversies and stuff. And that's exactly what that happened. It just evolved in public. Peanuts is very similar to that. REM, my favorite American band of all time, they start in one very small, quiet place and then become something bigger over time. So I was happy to just have that be my path. And I think a lot of people wait, like, I'm not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
You don't put your stuff out there. Other people will tell you if you're ready. Because the other thing is, that's very nice of you to say. The best-selling book I've ever done is the first book of Amelia Rules, and it will be till the day I die.
Because of the first one.
It's partly because it's the first one, but also because it's been in print for 25 years for a reason. You know what I mean? People like it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're willing to stay with it. Some people aren't willing to stay with it, even where I thought, oh, I'm getting better. Most people want those early things.
Mm-hmm.
The Woody Allen thing, the early funny ones.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like a lot of what you're doing now is on your Substack. I was a little puzzled when you first talked about it on Unpacking Peanuts. Like, so he's putting out all his stuff for free, but explain what the business model is for this site.
Well, the business model. Well, we've devalued art. Art has to be given away.
Uh-huh.
Art can't be purchased in normal. Like, when I was a kid, I could go to the newsstand and get a 75-cent comic. Those days are long gone.
Mm-hmm.
Long, 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 long gone. So I don't know what the business plan would be for someone who is starting out that has to have a Substack. I've written 24 books that people can buy. Mm-hmm. So the Substack just tells people there's 24 books you can buy, and I'm putting new work out. And the reason I'm doing it on Substack even before the fact that it's just a simple, good way to get the work out so people can see it and remind them that you're out there. But I didn't really want anybody's input, especially on this book I'm doing called In the Real Dark Night, which is about, creativity and depression. And I had worked with enough editors who are very lovely people. I understand exactly what they have to offer. Mm-hmm. And I know that is not for this project. I don't need nervous people worrying about, counting beans on something that is very difficult even to explain, let alone just, create. Mm-hmm. So I'm just creating each little unit until it's as good as I can make it. And then when it's that good, I just put it out there. And then, people can support it by all the regular channels, but hopefully buying the books because, people are still willing to buy a book, and if you sign a book, which is we're trying to figure out ways that we could get it more interactive, because if it's a signed book and it's an author experience, then it's a really important thing. But, I pity someone trying to just start out and going, all I have is my Substack, because Substack could change ownerships tomorrow. And that would be the end of like Twitter, Yeah. So it's really difficult. But just people don't pay for art. They think it should be free. Mm-hmm. Well, no one has a collection anymore. Think about that. No one has a record. Everyone has every record in the world.
Yeah.
But no one has a record collection. That's depressing. Because you can't absorb and love every record in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. So looking at the stuff on your Substack, I gathered that it's kind of like, here's a chapter or two, and then if you want to see what happens, then you have to buy the book. Is that kind of...
No, it's getting, all the comics will be for free for there forever.
Okay.
So the books that are eventually they'll be collected as books, but they'll still be on the site forever, for free. And, you know, as far as business models, the only person I know, well, the one person I know who started it is Jeff Kinney. Every page of Diary of a Wimpy Kid was online for free for 15 years, I think.
I see. So the site is Gville Comics, and so the G is what you mentioned. Your hometown that starts with G.
Yeah, my hometown is Girardville, Pennsylvania, which is this. It's an amazing place. It's unlike any place you've ever been, and I get a lot of joy telling stories because I do podcasts on the Substack as well too. So I get a lot of joy every once in a while hopping on and telling some Gville stories, but also because my last name's Gownley, it was a good way to go.
Right. Yeah. That was what my first thinking, Gownleyville, and then when you mentioned Girardville, okay, yeah. So it's both, I guess.
It's both. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, tell us about your own podcast. I did hear the one episode that was put out in the Unpacking Peanuts feed a while back.
Right. Well, yeah, was my first podcast idea. It was to promote that memoir, The Dumbest Idea Ever. So I called it Jimmy Gownley's Dumb Ideas. And it's just what the new version has of that one was me just kind of trying to write little essays and speaking them out into the world. This one, if someone calls in or writes in and they have a question about publishing or creativity or whatever like that, I try to answer it as best I can. And, you know, sometimes they go on as long as an hour, but I do very, very little planning, and I just try to make them as fun and interesting and as funny as I can. I've done tons of public speaking because I do school visits. I've done hundreds and hundreds of school visits, and I used to have a radio show in college and stuff like that. So I always like doing that. But one of the reasons I decided to do Unpacking Peanuts, because I mean, the reason Unpacking Peanuts exists is, yes, we love Peanuts. It's the greatest comic strip of all time, but it's also something that we're using to promote our own work as cartoonists. And I didn't want to do a Peanuts podcast alone. I mean, that would just be me talking about it. And first off, I would have ran out of steam really early. But also it's so much more fun to have a conversation. So when I wound down my first one with the first run of Jimmy Gownley's Dumb Ideas, I wanted to do another podcast, and I knew instantly what it was going to be. We're going to read every single Peanuts comic strip, and it's going to be me, Michael, and Harold. And I was thrilled that we're still doing it 4 years later, and it led me to go back and do my original one by myself again too. So it's been great.
Coming up, what inspires Jimmy about Peanuts? Following the South Park trick when writing, the difficulty of making funny comics, and more.
For more than 60 years, Dr. Victor Von Doom has been portrayed in comic books as a villain. But one podcast has been brave enough to challenge this narrative and present the man as the misunderstood anti-hero he truly is. I'm Professor Allen, and the podcast is Doom Speak. On the show, we present a more balanced view of Marvel's most maligned monarch. Over the years, we've covered his adventures in titles such as Iron Man, Doom 2099, Astonishing Tales, Silver Sable, and occasionally the title dedicated to his most persistent antagonists, Fantastic Four. If you believe that there's more behind the man behind the mask than the fake news that Big Comic wants you to think, then Doom Speak may be the podcast for you. Doom Speak can be found on all major podcast platforms as a part of the Relatively Geeky network feed and at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com. Give the show a listen. And hail Doom!
This podcast is part of the Deconstructing Comics Network, where we're grateful to our supporters on Patreon. Patrons get exclusive extra content. Pledge $2 a month or more and get Batman 66 podcast Bat Bits. We're currently looking at the draft script for A Riddle a Day Keeps the Riddler Away. At $4 a month, you also get our monthly show Silver Age Batman, where we're looking at many of the wacky Batman stories from the 50s. Also at the $4 level, you can still access our past series that covered the first 50 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, including episodes with guest spots by Swamp Thing artist Steve Bissette and New Yorker cartoonist Joe Dater. Follow our Patreon for free and get access to the first 2 episodes of both Bat Bits and Silver Age Batman. Check it out at patreon.com/deconcomics, and thanks for your support. Yeah, so, well, since we're on the subject, so you finished your Great Peanuts reread.
Yeah.
Although I doubt if it was completely a reread for many of us. I mean, I was seriously deficient in 1950s and 1990s strips, and I know Michael hadn't really read past about 1970 before.
Yeah. I really hadn't either, only bits and pieces. I was the only one who had read it all from beginning to end before.
Okay, you had. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I knew you were like an advocate of some of the 90s stuff, and Harold and Michael were like, okay, well, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, but when we got there, like, Michael was not even like a Woodstock fan or didn't know anything about Marcy. I'm like, there's so many great, wonderful things. Mm-hmm. Got to get over, didn't happen in your childhood, and that is tough for boomers, but I know some things did happen after then, and some of them were kind of fun.
So, as a comics artist, what's the most inspiring thing to you about Schultz's work?
Just the fact that he was able to put so much that meant so much to him in the strip. There are amazing comic strips before and after Peanuts, but there's only like isn't it 3 or 4 maybe that were ever that absolutely personal. I mean, there's things like Crazy Cat, but they're so few and far between. And that's the one that managed to be the deepest and the most creative while somehow being the most universal. And I love those things. I love it when the best thing and the most popular thing are the same thing, like the Beatles, that happens so rarely. But like, or Star Wars in 1977, like it was so unique, and yet somehow everybody loved it. I love those things. And Peanuts is so ubiquitous that we forget how weird it really is when and when we look at it in depth. I mean, it is really, really strange. If you never read a comic strip and someone just gave you like a Red Baron episode, well, what would you even make of it? It's bizarre. I don't know. But if you're in that world, it all makes perfect sense, and it's like total joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, here in Japan, I mean, people certainly know Peanuts, and there's a Peanuts museum here, but I don't know that many people actually like read it. It's just like characters on T-shirts and stuff.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's just like a dog and a bunch of happy kids.
Yeah. Well, it's that too. It is that too occasionally. Yeah.
So I know you had a residency at the California Schultz Museum a while back. Tell us about that.
Oh, that was amazing. I was on a book tour for Amelia Rules Volume 4 in 2009, and I was out at the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco and did a bunch of stuff. And halfway through the tour was like what to me was the pinnacle of the whole thing, was a week at the Charles Schulz Museum. And beyond that, I had met Mrs. Schulz once before, and she was so kind and invited me and my whole family to stay with her. And this is my story about this is my pinnacle and my reality check as a cartoonist. It's very Charlie Brown. So we flew from wherever the tour was to San Francisco, then rented a car and we're driving up to Santa Rosa, and the GPS was in the car because this was long enough that it wasn't in your phone. And it's like, take 95, take here, go left, go right. And then as we pull into the Schultz Museum parking lot, it says, "Congratulations, you have arrived at your destination." And I thought, how wise is my GPS? I have arrived at my destination. And Mrs. Schultz was there, and she gave me a big hug, and she goes, "All right, well, you're going to come up and stay at the house with us. Here's my address in case we get separated. Otherwise, just follow me up to the top of this mountain." Sure. So I plugged the address into the GPS, and it says, "We're sorry, your destination is unreachable." And I was like, how wise is my GPS? But yeah, I had a day where the museum was closed to the public, and it was just open to school kids. And so the school kids had the run of the place for the whole day. And then I did a presentation for them. And then they had this little program where you would set up at an art, a drafting table and work. And as people come in the museum, they'd talk to you about your work. And then, I sold books at the store for me. And then I did a bunch of school visits in conjunction with them. It was just had lunch at the Warm Puppy Cafe, and it was magic. If 5-year-old me setting out on a journey to be a cartoonist, if I could have known that was a goal, that would have been a goal.
I see. Yeah, I was there last summer. Got to look around there and the skating rink and everything.
Yeah, it's so cool. It just oozes Peanuts charm, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, what's your process for drawing? What tools do you use?
I work everything out in my notebook first. So my process is basically, I'll just brainstorm sketches, scribbles, whatever. And then when I get down to having to actually write something, I write down, if it's a 22-page comic, 1 to 22. And I try to simply write in one sentence on each page what's going to happen, and try to do the South Park trick, which is everything has to start with either a but or a therefore. And that means you're constantly traveling through the story as opposed to getting lost on tangents. So once I have that, then I just go draw them when I say draw roughs in my notebooks, it's circles and squiggles and little rectangles with the words next to them. Then I draw it on paper. I still draw on paper. I still draw an 11 by 17 Bristol board with regular Ticonderoga pencil. And I ink the whole thing with zebra brush pens, which are good for me because they're very flexible, but they're a little more stiff because I actually have a natural hand tremor. So if I really wanted to imitate Schultz, I could really go for it. But because the way the zebra brush interacts with the paper, I can push a little bit harder, and it eliminates that tremor.
I see. Well, now we're kind of close to the another question I wanted to ask, which I've been asking artists lately about ergonomics. How are you taking care of your hand? I know drawing can really mess up your hand.
Oh, it messes up everything. The first thing that went on me was my neck and back, and it was so bad I couldn't turn. This is the most embarrassing thing. It was, God, what year was it? 2011 or something, right? So it wasn't even that old, and I couldn't move my neck, and I had to go to physical therapy for 6 weeks, and I got to be friends with this older woman who is also going through physical therapy, and I said, "So, why are you here?" It was after weeks, and she's like, "Well, I was walking out. My cat got out, and I walked outside, and I got hit by a car, and I got thrown 50 feet, and it broke my pelvis, and I had to learn to walk again, but I'm getting there." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." And she's like, "Well, what are you here for?" "Oh, I cartooned too much." That's not a thing. No, it's terrible, but you have to just be aware of it. I sleep every night with my wrist in a brace because tendinitis is always rough. And if you're doing anything like book signings and stuff for school events, you have to, walk around with this big giant wrist brace on like a weirdo. But some people have real jobs. So,
Right.
Like my dad was a coal miner. Like he wouldn't have had any sympathy for me.
So you mentioned that you've done a lot of like presentations at schools. What's it like teaching comics?
It's fun. I mean, I've done it so many times now. What I do, actually, you can hear one of my presentations if you want to. On my podcast, Jimmy Gownley's Dumb Ideas, which is on the Gville Substack, or just wherever fine podcasts are found. There's an episode called Where Ideas Come From. And that is basically my school presentation reformatted so people could see it or understand it on a podcast. But that's basically what I would do. I go to schools and go, okay, there are these 5 places that we can go to look for ideas. Okay, that's where ideas come from. It's not some magical mystery place. Now, with those 5 places, let's create a brand new comic book character right here and right now. And it never fails. It's always something really fun and creative that they pull right from, their own lives and their friends and, the stuff they're interested in. So, so that's what I've been doing. I'm updating it a little bit now because I'm doing another school library comic convention tour for Amelia's 25th anniversary. And this one's going to have more digital components because, you got to keep up with the times. Normally I just have like a pad and a Sharpie and I can entertain them with that,
So you were trying to anticipate the question, where do you get your ideas, right?
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it is. Because I always thought when people say, well, where do you get your ideas is the dumb question everyone gets answered. And it doesn't matter. Like it could be Alan Moore or it could be Tolkien. And they always have just some smart ass answer. It's like, well, there's an answer. There's obviously an answer. There's inspiration, right? That's what seems like magic. But inspiration could happen to everyone. But the reason it doesn't seem like it does is because people aren't prepared. Paul McCartney dreamt yesterday because Paul McCartney wrote 200 terrible songs before yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's what all inspiration is. And then you look to your own life, the lives of people around you, the art and inspiration that you had, and the form you work in. That's it. Why for thousands of years people go, I don't know. That's where ideas come from.
Sure. Okay.
But it is. Right?
Yeah.
We could do it right now. We could create a comic book right now in 8 minutes. And it would be an idea. And the idea could be totally perfectly valid using just just simple things, something from your day, something from, a comic we like together and put it together. Executing it is what makes the idea have any value. So, but I think there's some weird thing that people think, well, you have access to some sort of mystery place where ideas come from, and it's not true. If you woke up in the morning and said, I'm hungry, I think I'll have cereal. Wait, I'll have bananas on my cereal. You're creative. You're not buying it.
No. I get it. What have you worked on that you were most proud of?
I'm pretty proud of Amelia Rules because that's just insane that it happened in 2001 and that it ran for 8 volumes. And something I dreamt up in a basement apartment became a New York Times bestseller. That was really cool. And I got to meet tons of great people because of it. Yeah, and every one of those, 1,300 pages, they were the best I could do at the time. So yeah, I'll say that.
Okay.
But I'm also really proud of this book, 7 Good Reasons Not to Grow Up, because no one likes it. And that made me like it a lot more. And it's actually being serialized on my Substack now. But it was one of those things where I went going in, it's like, this is going to be difficult for people to wrap their heads around, and it's going to be difficult for people to like if they feel. Some people don't like having a narrative rug pulled out from under them, and some people don't like to be confused is the wrong word, but some people don't like to feel a little bit lost in the story, and there had to be a ton of that in that story for it to work. So I knew it was going to be dicey, and people like it. I mean, it was fine. It earned out its advance. That's all that matters. But I like it just because it's the dark horse.
Yeah, I read the first few installments of it, and I was like, well, where are the 7 reasons?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just a fact of how it's being serialized, I guess.
It'll get to those eventually.
Well, they're in it now. I mean, the ones that have been serialized, there's a couple of reasons up there now. Yeah.
Okay.
Like one's on page 5, I think. So I don't think you read too far. They're spaced out.
I see. Okay. What could be done in comics that hasn't been done yet?
It doesn't almost anything, because, it wouldn't matter so much if they were recycling the same characters over and over, if the characters were having different stories or meant different things in different times. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But I think the thing that hasn't been done in comic books, particularly, at least since it for 20 or 30 years, has been comic book titles that are as personal as Peanuts was. Love and Rockets, unbelievably personal. Things like Strangers in Paradise, really personal. I think there's a version of that kind of storytelling that could reach a mass audience of people who don't normally read comics, that are interested in rom-coms and stuff like that, or sitcoms even. I think there's a chance to find a format and a content that would click, and we would have a richer comics culture, rather than because what happens is comics get popular. This is the only business plan or comics have, or comics putter along everyone's saying they're going to die any second. Then they accidentally get popular. Then Marvel floods everything with their crap. This is going on from the 70s. Then Marvel goes bankrupt because they have no. And then comics putter along for another 15 years until it accidentally gets popular. And then Marvel floods it with their crap. So this is what's going to happen. But in this next 15-year break, once everyone realizes that the Marvel thing's not reviving again, I think it'd be great to get some really personal, good comics that could reach a large general audience, like a television show, or like in the old days, a newspaper strip could.
I wish I could find. Maybe I'm just not looking the right place. I'm looking for more comics that are funny, and not just like a comic strip, but a comic book.
Yeah, it's hard.
Novel or something.
Yeah, it's very hard to make a funny comic book. I don't know that maybe comic book people just aren't inherently funny, but I think Amelia's funny. I'm very proud of how funny Amelia was. And I think there were a lot of funny comics in the 80s. I think that was a real kind of. I'm just going to replug this thing in here. I think that was a real kind of renaissance for comics, and there were so many of them were funny. The Ninja Turtle period, that whole era. But not so many now. It's hard to do funny when you're working in a team. And especially like if you work, like when I work for Disney, I don't know who the author or the artist is. So you can't play off their strengths. You can't write things that that they're going to like drawing. You can't count on the fact that they'll be able to understand the way your timing affects the joke. So a lot of times if they're not done by some independent person, there's something lost in the translation that makes them humorous but not funny. You know what I mean?
Because the different approaches kind of blur the message, I guess.
Yeah, right, exactly. The most success I had with working for Disney was when I did Tangled, and I drew the layouts for them. So I just, they got scans of me drawing just on printer paper an entire 96-page Tangled book or whatever, and they followed those layouts, and I think they came out the best. I'm really happy with the way they came out.
And you worked on something related to Zootopia?
I did 4 Zootopia books. Yes, 4 Zootopia young readers books. They're very cute. They were put out by Dark Horse Comics and Disney, obviously. And it was the characters when they were kids. So it was like Judy's school days, and the little fox was running around before he was a full-time con man trying to win tickets for his mom to go see Buns and Noses or something. I had a blast doing it. They were really cute, and those were beautiful. One of the fun things about working for Disney, though, is they're always, even if the timing and the form of the comics isn't always going to 100% be there, they're going to be beautifully drawn. Those people, they have a stable of artists that are just second to none.
Did you see Zootopia 2?
I did not. You know why? No one asked me to write a Zootopia 2 book yet. But when they do, I will be there. Was it good?
Yeah, I thought it was as good as the first one.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I ended up watching them back to back because it came out a long time ago, the first one, but I saw the second one came out and said, okay, well, I'll watch the first one on Disney Plus, and then a week later I saw 2 in the theater. So they're kind of blurring together in my head now.
That's how I saw The Matrix way back when. I had never seen The Matrix, and I saw it the same day I saw Matrix 2.
Oh. What kind of comic would you like to do that you haven't done yet?
I think I could do a superhero comic. I never wanted to do one in my youth because I was too alternative for that. But now that I'm older, like I was a big Superman fan as a kid. Loved Superman. Those were some of the first ones my dad bought for me. And I just hated the last 15 years of just Superman in the media and stuff like that. So when I realized how relieved I was that I didn't even care if the movie was any good. I just wanted Superman to be portrayed decently. Mm-hmm. I was so happy with that. I thought maybe I do want to do a Superman story. So I don't know. Maybe that's it. I have a little bit of an idea, but not enough to tell anybody about it yet. But I could see that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a genre that you like to read but you can't picture yourself working on?
Well, it would be unlikely that I could write a really good mystery because I am baffled by all mysteries. Like Scooby-Doo at the end, I'm like, no way, it was the guy that owned the mill. Still. So I don't know that I would be good at that, even though I always love them. Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I would. I don't have the kind of attention to detail to start at the end and put it all together. But I like it when someone else does it. That's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I feel the same about trying to do a mystery. So what's coming up from you?
Well, we are going to, on the for the 25th anniversary on the Gville Comics Substack, we are going to be releasing some of the old Amelia stories with new covers, new commentary, and a little bonus podcast episode that does behind the scenes stuff. And then I'm getting back to Tanner Rocks, which is an Amelia spinoff, which is running on my Substack. That'll be starting up again probably in March. And the comics will always be free on Substack. And then I'm on tour. I'm on tour from March until maybe next March for this Amelia 25th anniversary tour. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got a lot of comics in the back more of In the Real Dark Night, which is my comic about depression, which I'm very, very proud of.
Yeah. What inspired you to do a comic about depression?
Being depressed.
Yeah. Depression is inspirational.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Well, it was it was being depressed and realizing that I had seen enough instances, both in my own life and in other people's lives, where art really does make a difference. I mean, I was depressed when I started Unpacking Peanuts. It's one of the reasons I started it, is because I thought, okay, if I'm going to flood my brain with something, like we all are every day, it should be something good and Peanuts. It was that's like chicken soup. That'll be perfect. But I always realized that I think there's a way I could do a comic book that would talk about these issues in a way that wasn't it's in itself depressing. That when you got to the end of it, you would feel happy, you would feel like you had a lot of laughs, and you'd feel exhilarated. And that alone, even if it only lasted for 20 minutes, would be such a great thing, I think, to be able to give someone. So, but it's a really complex, it's complex to work on, and hopefully it reads very smoothly, and hopefully it seems very simple and very funny. But for me to get my head around to make it that simple and funny is hard. Mm-hmm. So, but that's ongoing on the Substack, and I'm really enjoying it.
Okay. And then Unpacking Peanuts, after finishing the reread, then you did the season on Snoopy. That's finished now, right?
Yeah, and we just started, I think, releasing Tuesday. Well, I don't know when this will be out, but our current season will be about the Van Pelts. We're doing Linus, Lucy, and rerun.
Right, so starting on January 20th then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think. And then after that, I think we're gonna leave it up to the audience. We have two possible choices for seasons: Mean Girls, which would be about Patty and Violet, and we don't have a title for it, but a Marcy focused season. Those are our two choices, and we might just leave it up to people to vote. We'll end up doing both of them, but which one?
Specifically Marcy, not Marcy and Peppermint Patty.
Well, it could be Marcy and Peppermint Patty. Pitch me on it. I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking the name of the season should have Sir in the title, but...
Oh, that's good. Yes. All right. Well, you need to think about that and get back to us, because I like that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, it's been great talking with you. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just an honor to be on your show. I listened to the Captain America's Bicentennial Battles episode last night. One of my favorite comics of all time. Love it. So that was great to go through it with you. And so thanks again, and keep it up, man.
Okay, thanks. You too. Check the show notes for links to Jimmy's Substack page and the Unpacking Peanuts podcast. Follow us on Blue Sky at Decon Comics. Join our Facebook page or the more active group. Listen to our audio-only videos on YouTube. All of those are linked from deconstructingcomics.com. You can communicate with us via any of those sites, or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com, or talk to us. Click the Leave a Voicemail link on the left sidebar of our site. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. The music backing the promotion of our Patreon is Change by Jazar. Our own Emmett got through the Aussie bushfire unscathed. The fire did not hit his home. So, we've finally been able to record the episode you'll hear next week. We discuss the first appearance of the Black Panther in Fantastic Four 52 from 1966. How does that first story dovetail with Christopher Priest's story from more than 30 years later? We're going to be covering FF 52 and 53 on this show before digging into Jack Kirby's 1970s work on the character. So get in on the ground floor of our Black Panther discussion next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.